Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 1, Episode 2 of Bosch Legacy. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, I have to point this out. I should have talked about it in the first episode, but it is still kind of an adjustment period. Once again, I'm only on the second episode of the opening theme, just because it's like, right, you got 7 seasons of the original, so it's going to take a little while to adjust. But I think the song is very befitting of, like, the opening. I should also say, like, I like that title sequence, because it reminds me of this. If you're familiar with Roseanne, I want to say it might be either the second to last or maybe even the last one. But there's that thing where it's like they do the opening title card and it's like still pictures of everyone, but it shifts and shows how much all the actors have changed over the years. Like that, to me, I think that's a dope thing. And it kind of reminds me of that. It's not the same, but it kind of, like, visually it reminded me of that kind of effect. Like the way it kind of fades into different, like, kind of almost like this motion picture of, like, the actors in the opening. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, jumping right into the episode, let's start off with Bosch's situation in this episode. Obviously, continuing multiple investigations, looking into Vince's son situation, Viviana. Well, for one, we find out Vince is dead, so I'm like, okay, good. But I still think when it's all said and done, well, Bosch, jumping ahead a little bit, is on a track to find Vance's son, so it might not be out of the realm of possibility, but he's apparently he seems like he's okay. Though what I brought up last episode, and it seemed like the show was hinting to it, has come to fruition, because we see that the person who's next in line to take over, the next CEO, is asking questions of, like, why is Bosch, because he's like, why is he hiring a private investigator like Bosch? Is it blackmail? Is it some air situation? And the guy he's talking to, who I forgot to talk about this last episode, is Phil Morris, which is interesting because the guy who kind of basically set Bosch up with a job, it's like, no, I've got people watching Bosch. But yeah, best know him for playing, obviously, Vic Stone, Victor, aka Cyborg's dad on Doom Patrol. Obviously, also know him as the Martian Manhunter in John Jones and Smallville, but tangents and all that aside. So, yeah. So he's the one specifically following Bosch, because I guess he's kind of like the CEO dude. I guess he kind of more so answers to him, or at least collaborates with him, because he's like, hey, don't even worry about it. Like, obviously, you're going to have to get ready, because eventually there's going to be a whole bunch of, like, people coming out of the woodwork after Vance dies, being like, oh, I'm one of his children, or something like that. It's like, right, you might as well get ready for it, but no one is aware of there being an heir. The only person who does is Bosch. Now, what's interesting, though, is that the CEO, the dude who's next in line to become CEO, is calling up Sloan, being like, oh, how's he doing? Hey, do you know why he hired Bosch? I have no idea. It's like, right, well, just let me know. I'll give you my personal number. And Sloan's like, yeah, sure, I appreciate that. So I might have been giving Sloan and Ida the wrong impression. I don't know. We'll see. But it almost seems like, oh, they've got his best interest at heart. Maybe. They might end up backstabbing him soon enough. But it's like, you could tell Sloan was like, I kind of see through you, mother effer. I know what you're up to. So we'll see how that plays out. But like I said, Harry's dealing with that, and he does notice later on that he's being followed. I guess, like, his network has expanded. I mean, obviously he needs, like, other people, like, not just Mo, but he ended up getting Jen's help, because he had Jen sit by while she was at, like, a nail salon or something like that. Jen got sat next to Jasmine to pump her for information, which it seems like Jen's kind of an actress that's kind of slightly on his payroll, because she's like, oh yeah, I got a new role. He's like, oh, how's that going? She's like, yeah, I got a waitress line. It's 3 lines. It's like, do you think I should quit? He's like, I am literally the last person you should be asking about career advice, so. Which I love that they have tackled, like, once again, the ramifications of, like, right, not having a badge and not having any official police capacity, that he doesn't have the benefits of being a cop. So when he's, like, looking for some files to look through, it's going to be like hundreds and hundreds of it's like hundreds of stuff to look through. He's like, yeah, I'll read all of them. And she's like, yeah, it's going to be about $30 a pop or something like that. He's like, wait, really? Like, why all of a sudden? It's like, because ever since you quit the force, like, you don't get the benefits of that. So he's like, all right, I'll take them. It's like, yeah, just a little details like that of like, yeah, it's, you don't have that benefits. I mean, even last episode, he had to cover up his badge saying retire, but like, still use it. But he knows, like, in a lot of cases, there are going to be situations where he won't be able to play that card. It's a card that probably can only be played and only should be played every once in a blue moon, because if he plays it too much, then people are going to start noticing that. Once again, if in anything in a big official capacity, he's probably not going to be able to play that card. But, from smaller stuff where it's not too much of a big deal, he can use it. So. But obviously a little dabble into... Well, I'll finish up with the whole Vance's son situation, because it turns out... what was the whole situation of... Yeah, Viviana's birth was at a place where it's like... Right, because it technically counts as a home birth. That's why I think it wasn't necessarily listed. Bosch ends up tracking down... the lady who was potentially at the hospital, the place was St. Helens, and he tracks her down and talks to her because she has a similar story of her daughter tracking her down. So Bosch wants to do the same thing. But the moment because she knows Viviana's story, and it's like, right, that man doesn't deserve to know, what he put that woman through. And, so he has no right to, but Bosch is like, at the end of the day, that's not our decision to make. Like, he doesn't have much time, so we have to, so she tells him the story. Viviana, like, connected with the child, which she named Dominic. But the baby was, like, taken away from her. Like, she fed the baby, for a week, because a baby isn't allowed to actually go home and leave the facility until they're over, like, at least, like, 5 pounds or over. So she bonded with that baby for over a week, and it's like, some people might say that's a blessing, because not many, I think, adopted situations have that, the biological parent being like that. Most children don't get that bonding that early, and it's like, it's a blessing. But Bosch was like, right, do you say that, you say otherwise? And she said that because connecting with the baby may have been the last straw. Like, she was already, I think, in a very bad place with everything going on, and I think having her baby taken away was just kind of the last, like, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. She killed herself. I think the lady said specifically strangled herself with, like, a clothesline, and by the time they found her, it was too late. So Dominic was adopted, and the adopted parents promised to keep the name Dominic, I think, in her honor. So I think that's some silver lining to it. We already knew this story last episode. We learned how tragic it was, but I think it just added even more layers of just kind of it's a sad tragedy. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, especially now Bosch at the end of the episode ended up tracking down well, at least paper-wise, found Dominic, like, who adopted Dominic, found his last name. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm sure we're far from done from that subplot. That's going to be a big plot going forward. So there's that angle, but then, circling back to the overarching thing of the whole Carl Rogers things, because there were some developments on that. He's got Mo keeping tabs on his vehicle, which Mo's got, I don't know if these are people within Mo's, like, circle of connections, like the guy at the mechanic shop, or the valet that he paid. Like, either those are, like, these have to be people he has a, like, pretty, like, relationship with. So Bosch luckily has a larger circle because Mo has a larger circle. So I'm assuming, like I said, I'm sure those are all Mo's connections that kind of help the whole thing of him keeping tabs on Carl, which we have the brothers Alex and Lev. They're in town keeping an eye on Carl. The moment, like, as here's a profile on Carl, I'm like, they have to be trying to kill him, right? Like, Carl has already gotten arrested. Yeah, charges might have been dropped, but it's like the people he's in league with might not be too happy about it, because looking through the tapes from Vincent from Bosch looked at him, which I love that because of the whole attorney-client privilege, Chandler couldn't necessarily let Bosch see it, but she's like, oh, you want some coffee? I'll be going for a little bit. I was like, oh, that's pretty slick. And he plays it, and the fact is that he talks about the Russian mafia, which there apparently have been no ties to the Russian mafia, but then Bosch says, like, right, they've been talking about Wall Street. Everyone was under the assumption he was talking about New York, but what if they were talking about fashion here? And so that might be, because apparently, like, a lot of the petition, like, fashion, like, Wall Street kind of has its ties to the mafia. But the fact is, Lev got brought in, and the gun and the profile. I'm like, oh, they must be trying to kill Carl because, like I said, he's too much of a loose end. Which Carl got the heads up from his financial dude Simon being like, yo, they brought Lev in, and the moment that got brought up, he was like, okay, I'll meet with them. I'm like, oh, he must know, like, Lev is their wet work guy. Is like, yo, when they need shit done and taken care of, they need people gone. Lev is kind of, well, especially him and his brother, but they specifically reference Lev, so I think that's probably just a shiver, like send a shiver down his spine. So that's definitely going to be interesting. And speaking of that whole Carl situation, we do see that Honey is in therapy, which makes sense after such a traumatic thing. You were shot, you almost died, you were in a coma for a bit. Like, it's understandable. So we did see the last episode, she does have medications, but it doesn't, like, we see at one point she's picking up a bottle, but we didn't see her take it, so she might not be taking the meds necessarily like she's supposed to, because she's obviously not sleeping well. She says, like, some of the medication helps with, like, the panickiness, but she also, like, she's like, I wake up sometimes 3-4 in the morning and I can't go back to sleep. So, and she also talks about Carl Rogers. She's like, she basically wants to hunt him down and kill him. And it's like, yeah, so what's the one thing that keeps you from doing it? She's like, civilization. It's like, I think, it's also the part of, she's also an attorney, because she knows, like, if I do this, there's a pretty good chance I won't get away with it. I think there's that, because she also knows, like, right, no matter what he's done, I don't get to just kill him. That's not part of a civilization. Like, that's not, that's not part of the civilization that we look at, and that is very frowned upon behavior, obviously. But like I said, I think there's also the attorney brain of, like, I probably won't get away with it. If I knew I could get away with it, even knowing the law like I do, that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to commit the perfect crime. I'm most likely going to get caught if I get a competent enough prosecutor and obviously a competent enough investigator. It's like, yeah. So, but she has to remind Bosch, like, yes, I'm all in, because Bosch is like, right, are you sure about, like, this? Because I'm planning on handling this my way. And she's like, perfectly fine with that. But you even see later on, she's still, like, checking, her bullet wounds. And she will always have a reminder for the rest of her life about this situation. So, I don't know, maybe I think taking down Carl won't be the end-all, be-all. She'll still have to deal with this, but I think it'll at least lighten some of the burden she has if she's able to take him down. So this is a personal thing for her. Because the moment Bella showed up, I was like, who's Bella? I was like, I completely forgot. Because she was only in, like, 1 or 2 episodes in the final season, but she's the judge's daughter. I was like, right, oh my god. Because the moment they showed the picture, I was like, right, the judge's daughter, right, we met her last season. I was like, right. To kind of keep Carl, like, in their confines of some sorts, they are going to be serving a civil lawsuit against him. And initially, Bella didn't want anything to do with it, because she's like, right, I've already been through this enough, because it's like, right, because she was asking Chandler how she was about all this, and it's like, Chandler's like, I'm angry about it, aren't you, that bastard gets to just walk after what he did to not only your mom, but also to me, what he potentially did almost about to do to Maddie. So, but ultimately, she, convinces Bella, like, right, let's keep up this civil lawsuit, and because at least it'll keep him preoccupied enough that he's so focused on that he won't see them kind of doing investigation, trying to get stuff to stick on the other side, because he'll be so caught off guard. He won't have his guard up as much when they kind of strike from the right, because he's so busy looking at this and dealing with this civil lawsuit on the left. So that's interesting. But also diving into the Jeffrey situation, which now I'm looking into it, why I recognize the actor who plays Jeffrey. There was a show on USA that was short-lived called Damnation. I really enjoyed. I forgot that's something I knew him from. But he's also apparently from The Mentalist, which now, like, looking at the pictures, I was like, oh, right. I want to say he was in the second to last and final season. I still need to see the final season. I never saw the final season. Which kind of bums me out. I want to see how that all ended, but I probably end up rewatching the entire show from the beginning at some point in time. Tangents and all that, so that's why he seemed familiar to me, looking through that really quickly. But Chandler is continuing to investigate this whole situation, and she happens to notice, like, some EMT situation where, you ended up putting some device on Jeffrey, and it was to basically check his blood, so you need like a blood sample. So I guess it kind of pricks his finger to draw blood. And I was like, at first I was like, oh, is that EMT up to some shady stuff? Which I love that roundabout way of like, oh yeah, I want to deliver this personally. And it's like, hey, and you've been served. I was like, oh, I love that. That was so slick. But I'm also curious, like, I guess it's like, right, if it's in a pink envelope, you're going to think it's something personal. And so I'm wondering, did she just buy an empty pink envelope, or was that for something else entirely? I mean, I know it serves the purposes of what she was trying to do, because if she came holding something, or at the very least, it keeps up, it added to validity to her story. Like, oh yeah, I'm here to deliver something to thank him, yada, 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 so on and so forth. So just thought that was neat. But got him on the stand, and he didn't do anything wrong necessarily. It's just he didn't sterilize the thing after you used it, because like an hour or so afterwards, he got the call about the doctor who got stabbed. So he ended up putting it on him, and it hadn't been sterilized, so it had Jeffrey's blood on it from when he had a seizure. So now it's like, right, DNA transference, and now it's like, yeah, the prosecutor kind of has to go like, yeah, we have no questions. And they have, other than that DNA evidence, they had nothing really fully linking Jeffrey to the situation. So they kind of have to drop charges against him for now, because the people can't proceed. So, you know, obviously Jeffrey, you know, they're going to be working towards actually saying that he's innocent, that he didn't do it. But this at least clears him enough that he gets to leave and not be locked up, you know. But I love that detective confronts Chandler about, like, right, he's like, I'm sure that guy did it. I'm like, why are you so certain he did it? I mean, maybe in the long run we'll find out he did do it, but I'm like, why are you so certain? I guess it's just his cop instincts, his guts. Like, right, whatever he does going forward is going to be on you, which you're immediately like, oh, that's going to be foreshadowing the fact is he's going to end up doing something, isn't he? Oh boy, that's going to suck. I was like, oh, that's going to suck so much. Because it is going to blow back on Chandler, and it's going to blow back on Bosch, which I love that he threw Bosch on him and said, yeah, tell him thanks for undoing all that he did with the badge. And I love Chandler's just like, move, asshole, because she tried to make, it's like, oh yeah, Bosch works for you. She's like, he doesn't work for me. He's like, oh yeah, sure. It's like, no, he doesn't. Bosch should never actively work for her. He doesn't, him and Chandler have obviously the very complicated relationship that they do. But it's like, yeah, once again, I that guy's not going to let it go, and I still believe there's going to be like some fallout from that. Once again, I think Harry knew there would be too, like him taking a stand like that. But once again, it's all about in the pursuit of truth, because for him, that's what matters the most. So that's definitely going to be interesting. Like I said, I'm curious to see if that's, the fact is they brought it up in episode 2 and sprinkled it in like that. I'm like, that's probably going to be another little subplot thing. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see if it, you know, circles back around throughout the rest of the season. But so there's all of that. So I doubt we're done with the Jeffrey stuff. I'm sure that's still going to come back around, because who murdered the doctor? He still hasn't been quite clear of being innocent. So either something's going to go wrong and he's going to end up back in this, like I said, and it's going to fall out on Chandler. Either going to end up dead for whatever reason, because maybe he had like an episode while he's in prison. I don't know. Like, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop in this circumstances. So we'll see where things kind of go from there. And we spend more time with Maddie and Vasquez as they're doing their thing, and then she like rolls up on 2 people, and it's like, oh, we'll check them for stuff, and it's like, wait, for what? It's like jaywalking, and it's like giving them an excuse to like check them out. So it seems, well, whatever it is, Vasquez has a history with both of them, so it's like, oh, that's interesting. So they end up taking both guys down. One of them takes off running the moment Vasquez almost starts patting him down. So you're like, because even Vasquez is like, it's weird. Like, just for, like, the fact is he took off running means, like, there must be something more to it. Like, he must be hiding something. Sadly, Maddie told the guy, like, oh, like, her suspect, like, oh, you stay here. Because she wasn't trying to make that mistake again. She already got in trouble with O'Neill for, like, oh, you're supposed to go with your partner. So she backed up her partner, but she didn't put him, like, secure him. At the very least, handcuffed him. Like, she handcuffed him, but it's like, at the very least, you could have handcuffed, like, him to like a railing or something. More so the protocol is just to put him in the back of the car. But she followed after Vasquez, but home dude got away. So it's kind of like, right, they need to kind of catch him, because if they don't, it's going to like be like, man, this whole shit show is just kind of spiraled out. It wasn't supposed to turn into this. It's like, I kind of put that on Vasquez because she's the one that kind of wanted to do this. Once again, I think because there's a personal history there. But the guy Maddie handcuffed left. It's like, did you really think he was going to stay when you told him to stay? And so Maddie has to clean up her mess. And I love when she's calling people, and it's like, oh, there was like a money situation. It's like, oh wait, he owes you money, and she's talking to people, and it's like there's another person. She has to pull the phone away. Ma'am, can you please stop screaming at me? I'm not sleeping with him. It's like, oh, 5'9", Sneezy. How many people named Sneezy do you know? I love that bit. But ultimately, they did find Sneezy, and we're about to arrest him. But Vasquez decided to let him go because if she made it official, they would have had to report everything that went down. So it's like it wouldn't have just looked bad on Maddie. It would have looked bad on Vasquez. So it's like, let's let this go. You start talking, I will hunt you down. So we'll see if that turns into anything. But Maddie luckily got her cuffs back because it's important to get them back because I never realized that. I've never seen handcuffs, like legitimate handcuffs. So it makes sense, but I just never realized they were serialized. And the fact is, she's like, right, my dad gave me these. So I don't know if those because someone can get a badge number from someone else. That's how that can work. You have to pull some strings to make that happen, but like a number that's no longer in use. I want to say, what was it, like Ordinary Joe? Joe ended up getting his dad's badge number, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say that was possible. It's one of those things, like, I think it can happen. You just have to kind of go through some hoops to do it. So I'm assuming the same thing with cuffs, because she's like, oh, my dad gave me these cuffs. So, and Maddie was more so like, man, I've been written up already once this week. Another thing. It's like, really? That's what you worry about, Bosch? Come on. So luckily that worked out. And it's like, right, you shouldn't have let your suspect the way you did, but you had my back, so thanks. And Maddie's like, I won't let you down. She's like, please don't say that. It's like, either Vasquez is saying that because it's like, don't say that cheesy stuff of like, I won't let you down, partner type of stuff. Or she's like, don't say that because you ultimately will let me down because now let's go, boot. But there was almost like this look on her face, almost like, all right, kid, you got some promise. I like you. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see that partnership grow. Well, it's more so, student-master relationship, more rather than like partner. It's still considered a partner, even though it's like, right, I'm like your TO, your training officer, but still, it's a combination of those two dynamics. So I'm very excited to see where all this ends up taking us with these new developments, where all this ends up heading going forward into episode 3. Once again, still 2 more episodes out to watch, so I'll get started on those as soon as possible. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.